Right, we made it to gold for January. I played quite a bit off stream, but one of the cool things I said is while I've been playing, I've been perfecting a deck that I'm having a lot of fun with. It's still not 100%, but this will be the deck I'll be playing next month, featuring in the videos, and I might make a few more additional contents because I'm enjoying this so much. So this is the current build of my Niv Mizzet deck in Historic. As you can see, obviously Niv Mizzet, 5 colours, running Gigantha as companion. Now, what we are running in addition to this, we're running 4 Growth Spiral, 4 Lightning Helix, 4 Territorial Carvu, 2 Tyrant Skull and 1 Drown in the Lock split, 2 Vanishing Verse, I think I'm going to go up on this, 2 Prismari Command, 3 Wandering Minds to find our non-creature spells, 2 Colligan's Command to, well, you don't need to explain how good this card is, 1 Clophis for Graveyard Hate / slow grindy value, 2 Deafening Clarions as our mass board wipe for against the weenie aggro creatures. We run Edgar, Charm Groom, for anyone who doesn't know. He is basically an 4/4 Vampire Lord for 4, but if he dies, he returns back as an artifact, Edgar Markov's Coffin. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you make a 1/1 token and put a counter on the coffin. If it gets to 3 counters, you flip Edgar back. So it's good inevitability and hard to get rid of unless you have exile effects, or you can exile, or artifact destruction effects. Basically, if you don't have exile effects, you need 2 removal spells, 1 for a creature, 1 for an artifact to permanently deal with Edgar. I've liked when he's come up, so I'm going to keep playing him for now. We are running a Teferi against my hatred of the Teferi, but this is the newly designed one from Midnight Hunt. Teferi who's slow as the sunset. So his +1 is we untap an artifact, we untap a creature, and we untap a land. And we gain 2 life, which is surprisingly relevant currently because Historic is just full of aggro decks or slow. Well, if you're not up against a control deck, you're up against some kind of aggro deck. And our 4 Niv Mizzets. Now, the reason I call the deck Niv Can Learn is because we are running Free of Cram Session. And it has basically, as you see here, it is just gain 4 life and learn. Now, gain 4 life on its own is surprisingly relevant with the aggro meta Historic is in right now. But the thing we care about here is learn. Now, what we get to do with the learn mechanic, which I really enjoy, is we get to pull a card out of our sideboard. So if we reveal our sideboard here, you might notice something here. We got a Reduce to Memory, which is a double white, but we still have Gigantha. That's because our starting deck, it's technically our sideboard. So even though we have cards that can learn and fetch these cards, and we can cast these cards in game, we don't violate the companion mechanic with this. So what we can do is, obviously we have this Beast Within essentially here, which we can cast without breaking the companion mechanic. And I did test in game by learning for this card. Yes, it still works and it's still good. Now, we have, apart from 3 Dovin's Vetoes here to show up our control matchup, which I'm going to tutor up, every other card in our sideboard is a learned card that we tutor off the cram session. So we have Confront the Past, which is Planeswalker Removal or Planeswalker Reanimation. We have Containment Breach, which is artifact and destroys a low mana artifact or enchantment and gives us a 1/1 blocker. Start from Scratch is general artifact removal and 1 damage. Has won me games before. Or even remove troublesome creatures. For example, I swing in with, let's say, a Wandering Mind and they block with a 3/3. I can do 1 more damage with this to kill the troublesome creatures. Teaching of the Arcadis. If an opponent has more cards in hand than you, draw 2 cards. Draw 3 if there's 4 more in hand. So if we are very far behind, we can draw back into it. But also in a tempo matchup, if we start, or we've mulliganed, and we hit basically land drop into turn 2, land drop, cram session into turn 3, land drop, cast this, there is a good chance your opponent will have more cards in hand than you, so you will draw the 2. It's very solid. Academic Probation. This was one I was very surprised in. So basically we can either for 1 turn name a card and they can't cast until our next turn. Really good if you know the control deck you're up against is only running 1 type of board wipe. For example, if you know they're running Wrath of God and you want to have one more turn swinging with them, your creatures or your board, for example, like a 5/5 Carvu or something, or if you know like the answer that your opponent will probably try to run for your deck, you can name that. Otherwise, a great thing to do with it, and it actually won me my promotional game to gold, is to go, okay, I'm going to block basically we were up against Izzet Phoenix, and Izzet Phoenix held back a Crackling Drake. It was the only creature they had left, but they knew that with the current state we had a Niv and a 5/5 Carvu, and they had a 6/4 Crackling Drake. They knew that they could block, trade, and hopefully keep going, reanimate Phoenixes and blockers and stuff as we were going on. But what we top decked was a cram session, so we crammed for the Academic Probation. We chose the target Crackling Drake and made it so it couldn't block, and actually won us our promotional game. And I think players are getting annoyed that I'm actually using these cards, because to most people these are just draft cards. We have a 7 mana make 9 power of creatures across 3 bodies card, Mascot Exhibition. This is essentially the super grind out card. For example, if you are 1-for-1ing with an opponent and you're down to if you have the mana to cast this, it can be backbreaking. Obviously 9 power across 3 bodies, they need 3 removal spells or a board wipe to truly remove it. Pretty solid. 5 mana, Introduction to Annihilation. 5 mana to exile a permanent, and its controller can draw a card. Now, obviously, you don't want your components drawing too many cards, but when you do use this, it can be great. For example, I have exiled a Ferry hero Dominaria. Yes, they drew a card, but they would have drawn way more cards if I hadn't had this to remove it. I also used it on a Stonecoil Serpent, which had protection from all my multicolored spells. It's a very solid card, and I think pretty decent. Introduction to Prophecy, this is basically our tempo play. If we cram into this, we are just looking for something, if that makes sense. We are just going to go, alright, we're going to Scribe 2, draw a card. 3 mana, not much to say about it. Reduced to Memory is the card we highlighted earlier, the fact that it doesn't violate the companion mechanic because it's here, not in our starting deck. For example, if we were to move this as we show you here, if we move this into our starting deck, it becomes that we can't play Gigantha. But in our sideboard, there is no such restriction. Now, moving along, we also have Academic Sciences. This is the one we will tutor for the most. It finds us a basic land type, gains us 2 life. So, funnily enough, if we cram session and we don't have anything particularly we want, I will grab this to guarantee us a land drop later down the line, because we always are mana hungry with the color intensity of this deck. And incidentally, that sequence gains us 6 life, which if we're up against something with an aggro strategy, it can be really good. I have outgained the mono white cleric deck. We're just using some of these cards. It's absolutely crazy. Finally, we have Mercurial Transformation. Doesn't look like much, but basically it gives us a choice to turn a permanent, non-land permanent, into a 1/1 or a 4/4. And you might think to yourself, why would you use a 4/4? Well, you can use that on your own things. I have turned a treasure into a 4/4 to punch into my opponent's face and win the game. And I've turned their not hexproof, their big flying angel Shalai into a 1/1 to get pinged with a board wipe. So that's the deck we're going to play. I'm going to continue to learn, ironically, how good these spells play in most scenarios and see how I change them up. The main deck I'm relatively happy with. I might go up more Vanishing Verses. It is sad, as you might notice, that we do not have a Selesnya card in the deck, because we're restricted to Gigantha, so there's not a lot I would want to run here. I might put them in the sideboard to truly have all 10, but yes, this is the deck we are going to run. I hope you enjoyed watching. We made it some gold for January, and we'll see where we start in February and how things go. But yes, expect a lot more content revolving around the learn mechanic going forward, because I'm actually really been enjoying this mechanic. Thank you.